This last video is about two things. Er det ikke det? In this video, you will first get help to spot your blind spots. As an important part of this, we will investigate feedback, as this makes it easier for you to see what you need to work with to reach your vision and goals. Do you remember this drawing? Next in the video, you'll investigate your stories that you tell yourself to find the ones where you put yourself in a fixed mindset. In doing so, we will build on your learnings from fixed and growth mindset from the video about setting clear goals. After helping you spotting where you have a fixed mindset or a story that doesn't work well for you anymore, I will help you so you can change it to release your potential. However, just one word before we begin. According to the nature of this kind of work, it is important to say that a lot of us need somebody to talk to when we are working with this kind of deeper reflective work. It's obvious, we can't coach ourselves. So do have this in mind, because you might get new insights through the video that you need to discuss with other people. Or maybe you need input on what your blind spots and development areas could be, because you don't really know for sure what you should work on. So remember to watch this video in a pace and in an order that fits your process. And remember, you're not alone. Do reach out to your leader, PNC, your employees or others that you trust to get help, and also to secure that you have a good process. Feedback. First, I'll now share a short story. Then we will look at reactions to feedback with the brain in mind, and then I will give you advice on how you can ask for it in a good way. A leader had a difficult situation with an employee, since the employee stated that she felt she was not so important as others in the team, and it affected her motivation. The leader didn't recognize this picture at all, so he went back to the employee and they investigated the issue further. Through their talk, it became quite clear to both the leader and the employee that the feeling came from the leader's morning ritual. The leader knew that it was important to say good morning to the team. So every day he went by the team's office, put his head into the room and said, "Good morning." But since the employee sat behind the door, she never saw his face like the rest of the team. This was something that the leader had never thought about before. It can seem silly and the employee can come across as being too sensitive. However, talking about it solved the issue. Now the leader walks into the room, makes sure to have eye contact with everybody, and then says, "Good morning." And now the employee feels seen too. I believe this little example illustrates that we never know the effect of our actions. Even when we are having the best intentions, we need to engage in dialogue and feedback if you want to know how our words and actions affect others around us. It's especially clever to ask others for feedback when we want to grow, and in this case, reach our goal and our compelling vision. But we might not feel comfortable with feedback. And since this can be the most important thing to get in order to grow, this is where we will begin. When somebody comes and asks you, "Do you want some feedback?" It might be a nice gesture, at least looking from the outside. And of course, we do what is expected of us. We say yes, and maybe yes, thank you. However, a lot of us don't really feel well when it happens. We might assume from experience that it's going to be a negative experience. We might also begin to worry about what might hit us next. And when we look into how our brain works, it makes sense. Let's take a look at our SCARF model. We can either receive a reward or a threat on status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, or fairness. Let's look a little into each element in the model that teach us about how our brain is wired. First, status. In this case, what often can happen is that our status is threatened. Instead of giving a status reward, we are now easily in the smaller position where the other part plays the part of being the expert in the room, telling us things about our blind spots. We're threatened uncertainty too, because we don't know what to expect. We might hear about new blind spots that will be hurtful, and we don't know what is going to happen. Our autonomy is threatened too, since we know that what is considered good behavior is only to listen, and we can't control how much we will hear, what it will be about, or how it's going to be delivered. Even though we can say no, thank you, to get feedback, it would almost be embarrassing to do so, at least if it's coming from an employee. Relatedness might be threatened too, since we might get upset, or if the other part is not happy with how we have acted, it can potentially destroy our relation. And if we don't agree with the feedback we get, fairness might be threatened too. Also, the whole process can seem really unfair, because in reality it's difficult to defend ourselves, since it easily will come across as not being good at receiving feedback. So what this means is that we might all know without our thinking mind that it's a good thing to get feedback. But since our brain is wired as it is, it might trigger quite a negative SCARF response, and maybe on all parameters in SCARF and at once. This can explain why 40 years of telling leaders to give employees more and better feedback has failed. Because you might have sensed that maybe, and maybe unconsciously, that it's not easy and comfortable for the other part to receive your feedback. It can therefore feel wrong to give others feedback. Maybe you have, without even realizing it, been protecting your employees from feedback in order for them to stay happy and to perform well. No wonder the score on feedback is always low in companies I know of, despite the obvious need for feedback. However, there is a trick here to how you can turn this around, and it's very simple. You just begin to ask for feedback. When you ask others for feedback, then you are driving the interaction and taking control of how and when and from whom you receive feedback. And then the situation is completely different. Let's take another look at SCARF again. When you ask others for feedback in order to grow, you have status. You come across as a person who wants to improve and grow, but also, and at the same time, you're giving status to the people you ask for feedback, because you're implicitly saying to them, you are important and I value your opinion. You have certainty because you can ask them to give you feedback on something quite specific. And with your questions, you are deciding how the conversation will play out. You have autonomy because you are the one initiating Peace. Stopper her.